Welcome back to our podcast. Today, we're tackling a very common and often frustrating challenge faced by many English language learners, the significant gap between understanding the language and being able to speak it fluently. It's a situation where learners can consume a lot of English content, but then freeze up when it's their turn to speak.
Oh, that perfectly describes my own experience. I feel like I have a solid grasp of English when I'm reading articles or listening to podcasts, but the moment I need to construct my own sentences in a conversation, my mind just goes completely blank. It's incredibly disheartening. What is the fundamental reason behind this disconnect between comprehension and production?
The primary reason often lies in how our brains have been trained. Typically, learners focus heavily on developing comprehension skills, absorbing grammar rules, expanding vocabulary through reading, and understanding spoken language. However, the act of speaking requires a distinct set of cognitive processes, specifically active production and real-time retrieval, which often receive less direct training.
That's a really insightful distinction. Training for comprehension versus training for production. Could you elaborate a bit more on how these two types of brain training differ? What specific mental activities are involved in each?
Certainly, comprehension training usually involves passive learning methods. You might spend hours reading books, listening to lectures, studying grammar textbooks, and memorizing vocabulary lists. These activities are excellent for building a robust knowledge base and understanding the structure of English.
I understand. So, all that time dedicated to reading, listening, and grammar study is indeed building up my internal knowledge of English. But it sounds like it's not directly preparing my brain for the dynamic, spontaneous act of speaking. It's like stocking a vast library, but not practicing how to quickly find and use the specific books needed.
That's an excellent analogy. Speaking, on the other hand, is a highly active, real-time skill. It demands that your brain instantly access relevant vocabulary, recall appropriate grammatical structures, and then assemble them into coherent sentences, all while simultaneously processing what others are saying. This rapid retrieval and assembly process requires dedicated, specific training.
Okay, that explanation really clarifies things for me. If passive learning builds comprehension, what are the active methods that specifically train the brain for speaking production? What should I be doing differently in my practice routine?
The most direct and effective way to train for speaking is to engage in active speaking practice. This means consciously making an effort to speak English aloud as much as your daily life allows. You can start by narrating your routine activities, describing the objects and scenes around you, or even summarizing a news article or a chapter you just read.
Narrating my day or describing things aloud sounds a bit unusual, almost like talking to myself. Will this solitary practice actually translate into tangible improvements when I'm interacting with other people in real conversations?
It might feel unconventional or even a little awkward at first, but it's incredibly effective for building speaking fluency. When you speak aloud by yourself, you bypass the immediate social pressure and anxiety often associated with conversations. This allows your brain to practice retrieving words and constructing sentences without interruption, thereby building the neural pathways and the muscle memory for speech production.
I can see the logic behind that. It's similar to how a musician practices scales or an athlete performs drills. These exercises build the fundamental mechanics and automaticity, which then makes the actual performance, like a concert or a game, much smoother and more confident.
Precisely, another powerful technique that directly targets the production part of the brain is to consciously try thinking in English. Whenever a thought or idea arises in your mind, make a deliberate effort to formulate it directly in English, rather than thinking it in your native language and then going through the mental process of translating it.
The idea of thinking directly in English feels like a monumental task. My mind defaults so quickly and automatically to my native language for every thought. How can someone even begin to shift their internal thought process to operate primarily in English?
The key is to start small and be incredibly consistent. Begin by simply labeling common objects around you in English in your mind. When you're performing simple, routine tasks like preparing a meal, commuting, or doing chores, try to internally narrate the steps you're taking in English. It's about gradually training your internal monologue to function in the target language.
So, the ultimate goal here is to cultivate an internal English voice that operates independently, without needing translation. But what happens when I'm in an actual conversation and I get stuck? For instance, if I forget a specific word, or I'm unsure how to phrase a particular idea.
In those crucial moments, the most effective strategy is to prioritize communication flow over absolute perfection. Instead of halting the entire conversation to search for the exact word you've forgotten, try using a synonym, rephrasing your idea using simpler terms, or even employing gestures and descriptive language. The primary aim is to keep the dialogue moving forward smoothly and naturally.
That's a significant relief to hear, and it's very reassuring. I always get so anxious about making mistakes or sounding awkward or unintelligent. Is it truly acceptable and even beneficial to not always find the perfect word or phrase immediately?
Absolutely it is. Mistakes are an inherent and incredibly valuable part of the learning process for any skill, including language. If you become overly focused on avoiding them at all costs, you'll likely increase your anxiety and reinforce your tendency to freeze. Your brain learns effectively from errors, and prioritizing clear communication helps build confidence and fluency.
That perspective is incredibly helpful and has really shifted my mindset. So, to summarize the main strategies we've discussed for training the brain to speak: active speaking practice, even when alone, attempting to think directly in English, and importantly, embracing imperfections to maintain conversational momentum.
Precisely, you are essentially retraining your brain to function as a fluent and confident speaker, not merely as a passive recipient of language. This requires consistent, deliberate practice focused on active output and the real-time application of your existing knowledge in communicative situations.
This approach feels much more actionable and empowering compared to just studying grammar books or memorizing endless vocabulary lists. It provides me with a clear, practical direction on how to actively improve my spoken English skills. Thank you so much for these insightful explanations.
You're most welcome, and remember, consistency is absolutely paramount for this type of brain training. Short, regular practice sessions, even if they are just 10 to 15 minutes each day, will yield far more significant and lasting results than infrequent, lengthy study sessions.
That's a fantastic reminder about the importance of consistency. I'm going to commit to narrating my morning routine in English starting tomorrow. I'm genuinely excited to see how this focused, daily practice impacts my overall fluency.
That's an excellent plan. Another highly beneficial tip is to occasionally record yourself speaking. Listening back to your own voice can help you objectively identify specific areas for improvement, such as pronunciation nuances, common grammatical errors, or awkward phrasing, all without the pressure of real-time interaction.
Recording myself speaking? That sounds like a very smart idea for self-assessment. It would allow me to hear my own speech patterns and perhaps notice recurring issues that I'm not even aware of while I'm speaking.
Indeed, it provides invaluable objective feedback. Furthermore, try to actively seek out opportunities for low-stakes speaking practice. This could involve finding language exchange partners online, joining local conversation groups, or even practicing with friends who are also learning. The more you practice in varied contexts, the more adaptable and robust your speaking skills will become.
Finding language exchange partners sounds like a great next step after I build some confidence practicing alone. It introduces real human interaction, but still within a supportive environment where the other person understands the learning process.
Exactly, the ultimate goal is to build both confidence and automaticity in your speaking. By consistently training your brain for active production, you'll gradually find that speaking English becomes a more natural, fluid, and less daunting process over time.
This entire discussion has been incredibly insightful and practical. Thank you for breaking down the concept of training the brain to speak English so clearly. I feel much more equipped and motivated to tackle this challenge now.